Welcome back to Brothers in Boots. My name is Mike.
My name is Jeff.
And today we have the second edition of our Users Boot Collection video. This one will be a little different than the first one. The first one was just pictures. But in this one, Everett sent us a video of his collection. So you'll not only hear a little bit from him, but you'll see a video of the stuff moving. And then for the third collection, we will actually try to have Tony, the owner, on himself. And we'll see which of the three styles work the best. Like I said, this one, just like the last one, it's a little bit more experimental. So maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't. We'll see. And Jeff, it looks like you have a bottle of Russell's there.
This is the most recent pick that I did at Wild Turkey Distillery. Is a 10-year age statement, which is pretty rare. Wild Turkey, Russell's Reserve. Fantastic pick, if I do say so myself. Came from CNA, Camp Nelson A Brickhouse. I've been really happy with the Camp Nelson picks. They at first they weren't doing very many of them. They were only doing them for the Kentucky Spirit. And you had to actually be good friends with them to get it into a private pick. But that's kind of changed a little.
Cool deal. Alrighty. So like I said, we're going to bring the video up. You're going to hear Everett. We're going to pause at different points throughout it. We're going to try not to do too much shimmying back and forth in the video because I know in YouTube that's a little jarring, especially when it's going to come across in this recording. So, like, comment, subscribe. Once we get done with the third one, you guys will have to kind of let us know which of the formats you like the best. The one which is Tony's collection, which is the third one, that won't be one we'll be able to do with everybody. That's going to be a tougher one. So it'll really kind of be between pictures and the videos, and even then we might have to mix them depending on the end user skills. Everett has some technical skills, or at least some big videography, YouTube technical level skills that he can do this. It's not just straight pictures. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here, maximize it so everybody can see it, and we'll go ahead and start with Everett's first pair of boots.
All right, so I figured I'd do a video on my Pacific Northwest boot collection as it exists currently. And to kick us off, no pun intended, is a pair of Nick's Rangers in Max Support Black. It's an 8-inch, 55 last. Black edges. Soft toe. Got the 430 here. These are a little bit big for me. This is the first pair I ever bought, and so I just followed their sizing guide and went a little bit too wide and a little bit too long, really. And then I actually got these from the ready to ship page, which, as I understand it, is a bunch of boots that got sent back for whatever reason. Maybe they didn't fit or whatever. And of all my pairs on the 55 last, these have the highest heel. And so I don't know if whoever sent them back ordered them with a extra leather in the heel stack to make them higher or something like that. But as a result, my feet slide forward in these. And moreover, after break-in, the arch completely fell away on these, and I just don't feel it anymore. I feel like I'm standing on the heel stack. And because of that, they are for sale. So, but I still own them, so they are still part of my collection, technically.
Alrighty, so first pair. Go ahead and minimize this here so we can talk.
Love your Lazy Susan, Everett.
Yeah,
Everett.
That's a good idea.
I used to have a nice one, and now I've got this plastic one. It functions, but it's not as pretty as that.
Yeah, cake decorator is, I think, what a lot of people buy, like, to do that quickly and easily in pictures. Like a cake decorating platform is what it's called. That's what, especially the automated ones, that's usually what they are, that spin on their own. But yeah, I mean, he nailed a couple things there. So I don't know if his claim about the quick ship is accurate or not. They might have in some models some stuff stock. I don't think they're just returns, but I did notice two things in there. In the heel stack, you can tell one stack that looks a little weird close to the bottom, so they might have actually raised that one. It has a different sheen and a different texture, like it wasn't sanded at the same time. The sizing thing is always right with everybody. Everyone figures out one or another. Sliding forward, I don't think is the higher heel stack. I think it's the lack of the width holding them in place and it just being able to happen. But overall, it's definitely a safe pick. It's what a lot of people go for, all blacked out. I don't know if I've seen many all rough out nicks before. That might be one of the first ones I've seen, especially for something that's like a quick ship. They usually are like Franks. They're heavy into the upper should be smooth. That might be the first like full rough out I've seen. But I mean, as their MTOs have gotten bigger, maybe other people have ordered them. But that's a first for a non-MTO.
I noticed the same thing with the all rough out. That was kind of a surprise. I hadn't heard anybody say that a lot of their in stocks are returns before, but I'm sure that some are. In this case, I have no doubt that it is.
Yeah, that one has to be.
Because they wouldn't normally do an all rough out. And because it definitely does look like a +1 on the heel. It looks like it's a little far forward as well. It does bring up the learning experience. A lot of people learn and a lot of people ask questions about, which is the sizing. And, they'll be like, oh, well, you go a half size down or you do this or you do that. And as he found out, it's not accurate. Everybody is different. And how far they go down and how far their width changes really depends on the person. A fit sheet is still important, but he didn't have the ability because Nix didn't do it. And he had to go through this learning experience and he didn't win. I do think it's a +1. I do think that because of the sizing not being right, because his guess being off, has put the arch in the wrong place so that he is breaking in that heel point, like he said.
Yep.
He wouldn't be breaking it in like that if the boot was sized correctly. He would feel the arch more the way that he should.
Yep, and my first pair of Nicks, I went through the same thing where I ended up breaking in the edge of that heel stack, and it takes like 800 hours. Like the boots are pretty beat up by the time it gets to that point. And yeah, if the arch isn't in the right spot and that heel stack is too far forward, you will get to the point where the footbed and the midsole are broken in, and you do feel that heel stack. That's sizing is important. And a tough thing that we don't talk about a lot in these is in these arched lasts, your arch length is really important. Like your Brannock in the heel to ball is almost more important than heel to toe. It's unfortunate that the last is sized in heel to toe, which is why it's when it can be done, when you can get a maker that can tack onto the front, man, does it make a world difference. I mean, you sent me a couple pictures for one that, I showed you Brian's, the inside of Brian's boots, and that's marked as a 1977 number 4. And like, while the ball is where it should be, it definitely needs something tacked onto the toe. Like he is at the front of those.
Which is more a matter of whether you got long toes or short toes.
No.
It can also be the construction of your foot as well.
Yeah, he seems to have a lot of hypermobility problems with, depending on the socks he wears, like his feet can splay out more than others. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a thing. But I mean, overall, he went with the safe first bet. As we say a lot of times, sometimes the safe first bets are dangerous, and he lost. And this is why. So let's move on to second pair.
And that 430 wouldn't have been a normal choice either.
Correct. Yeah, that would not have been stock choice.
Also leads us. I mean, it's a nice outsole, but it wouldn't have been a normal in stock outsole.
Yep. All righty, on to boots number 2.
And next up, everyone's favorite, the JK Superduty, or the Squeaky Duty, one might even say. I don't generally like to talk a whole lot of crap on JK, but I don't like that tongue leather. It's one thing I can say for sure. I didn't have any issues with their QC on these. Seemed fine to me. Decent pair of boots. You can see the soft temper on these uppers, evidenced by all these extra wrinkles. It's a 10-inch brown, smooth over rough out. A little dusty because I was cutting some wood. Got Red X. I believe these are on the 3708 last. It doesn't say on their website, so I can't know for sure. But much like the Knicks, the arch has fallen away on these, and I just don't feel it anymore. However, it is kind of nice having the fire-resistant thread and the Red X for whenever I'm burning brush or something like that. So probably going to keep hold of these.
Well, he ain't kidding about the arch falling away on that one. I would not have guessed those were arch boots from the side view at all. They have none of the definition. So usually, like in an arched boot, I'm going to grab a boot here as an example. You see a point at which there's a slight curve in the down, and that one's completely fallen to, it's basically a straight line. This is not a P&W.
I've never heard anybody talk about JK's arch and what they do with it. I've heard a lot of discussion about Franks and Whites and Knicks as to what they do to fill in that arch area on the last, and it can change by the thickness of the iron's thickness. It can change by using scrap leather. There's lots of variables that can change how much it breaks in or how much it doesn't break in, or even skiving with whether you get that roll of quarter feel that people talk about. But I've never heard anybody talk about JK and how what materials that they use and whether their arch falls away or not. What I do know about JK, their reputation in general as far as business goes, I would certainly assume that they're using a scrap leather where the arch is going to fall away as it breaks in, which seems like what Everett is describing.
So mine did the same thing Everett's did before Franks rebuilt them. I don't have them to show you. I can show you the Franks rebuild, but I actually had the same exact problem, and I don't think it's necessarily a piece of scrap leather. That like insole midsole piece I had was so soft from day one I could make the toe touch the upper in terms of flexibility, and I think it just worked its way down. I mean, it was so much so that when I mailed them in, they only had like 350, 400 hours on them, and the arch started falling out. And like Ashton, 110-pound Ashton could make them touch. And then Junior called me. He's like, "You sure you want to rebuild these? These are like brand new." I was like, "Junior, they don't even have 300 hours on them. Look how much you could twist them." And then his rebuilder came up and said, "Why does he want to rebuild these? He's like brand new." And he's like, he told him they have 300 hours on them. Oh, okie dokie. See you in a couple weeks. I mean, they like the second pair that I got from them, the free pair that they made me that Frank's also rebuilt. I was never able to force that touch to happen from any point until I sent them, and they were just the second pair they built were so, even though they're supposedly built on the same last, the leather kept springing back, and it was so tight on my waist area. I kept having to jam one of my dress shoe lasts into it to try to keep it open. And I just never could get them to work, even with like the lightest of socks. It got to the point they spring back so hard that even putting them on barefooted squeezed the waist area, so that they just had to get rebuilt.
I'm glad that he won the lottery, at least the JK lottery. They aren't known for fitting people as well as the other brands, nor are they known for as well as taking responsibility for it. So thank God that he got fitted correctly, or fit himself correctly, whichever the case may be.
Yep.
The Red X is what it sounds like he needs for his world. So He got the right sole there. It's not the right sole for me personally, but it is the right sole for him in this case. So he's got a reasonably good pair of boots to kick around and fuck up, assuming that it keeps his arch happy.
Yep. And it sounds like he mostly cuts down. I'm assuming that it's probably not what his work is, but I'm assuming he lives on a fairly, wooded or brushy piece of land where he cuts stuff with a chainsaw and burns a lot of that brush. So he's at least got a use for him. Like I said, mine that got rebuilt, one pair got insulation and the other pair got built for not getting sliced up in the data center. Jeff's seen a pair that I've had to repair of oiled chestnut latigo that got a pretty nasty slice off the side of a PDU that wasn't even pushing that hard, but no, can't round off edges. That costs money. So, all right, let's go to pair number 3.
And moving on to whites. This is a pair of 10-inch Packers. I believe this is Red Dog. I can't be sure. I got these on eBay. It's been run through a pebbling machine. I don't know what last these are on. These toes seem pointier than my 690s, but I've also seen some pictures of some 695s that are way pointier, so maybe they're just 690s. I don't know. No pole loops. Let's see. So I got these on eBay for less than $100, and the soles were completely bald on them. The top lifts had worn into the heel stack there, so I actually resold these myself. It was the first pair of P&W boots that I ever resold. So that's a J&FJ Baker midsole, hand stitched through the midsole only. What else? Oh, I made these kilties myself, dyed them, waxed them and all that. The only real problem with these is this hole in the vamp there from the flex points. They're obviously showing a lot of age, but they've got a vamp liner. I mean, it's not that big a deal, but if it turns out to be a bigger deal, I'll just have them rebuilt.
Well, I mean, that's first. I have never seen a pair of whites that was only pebbled in the uppers. That's a new one. When he says pebbling machine,
it's more the wear and where it came from on the animal.
That's a possibility too. But when he means pebbling machine, he's talking about like when a texture's debossed into leather. That's what he's talking about. But I have never seen a hide that would only be partially done that way, because it very clearly from the ankle up, unless the original pair was pebbled and it got, slowly pulled out, or maybe the bottoms were rebuilt at some point. One thing I did notice,
could have been lasted out on the bottom. It is stretched more on the bottom, of course.
Yeah. One thing I did notice is that's a single stitch around the outside, so that maybe has gone through a rebuild or two, resole or two, and maybe that eliminated one of the dual row, the dual stitch down. I mean, it's a solid pair of boots. In terms of the toe, that's definitely a number 2 toe, but looks to be on a slightly wider pair. It's maybe like a number 2 on a maybe a double E width. I'm not sure what Everett's width is. It's got to be somewhat normal to be able to do a quick ship pair. So I'm assuming it can't be wider than a double E. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to those toe shapes, when you say pointy to not pointy, there's some variance. And if it's structured, not structured, who made it, how hard they pulled. Seeing the inside is usually a better indicator of like how pointy the toe is. Different leathers have different, make it look different. Especially we're noticing with a lot of people who get bison leathers, they're noticing toes are a lot more exaggerated than they expect. So, alrighty.
There's a lot to like here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably a 690. I can't be sure. I'm not sure what else it would be, but it doesn't look like a 695. So by default, I'm guessing 690. I didn't notice his gussets in the first 2 boots, but I'm guessing that the first 2 were done as a trifold, or I would have noticed it. These are not. Mm-hmm. These are done as the C-fold, which could just be because he bought it used, or it could be because that's the way he retrained it. But in either case, I noticed it.
Yeah, and it's
The beveling was cool.
it's common for whites to have a C-fold. So a lot of times when they do matching leathers, they don't give you a tongue thick enough to be able to trifold, and you do a C-fold. So that's not uncommon. But I that didn't
Or wide enough.
Well, true too. I don't think that one was a matching tongue leather, but those are also old enough that you never know. That could just be sweat that caused that to be darker. When you get those eBay pairs, it's tough to know.
And that reminds me, on that previous pair, we both forgot to mention the tongue that he mentioned on being noisy and not liking the gusset material that JK used. And I'm not sure why they do that, unless they're not buying separate, special, softer gusset leather.
That's a good question. Mine never squeaked, and I've never heard of that as a common complaint, but like he barely touched it and it squeaked. So that's obviously something that happens, which is obviously why he made his own full-length kilties, is to help alleviate some of that squeak. If anyone wondered why they were full-length, that's clearly what he was doing it for.
But anyway, back to where we're at. I like the Packers. I think the Packers are nice. It was a nice choice. He got a great deal on it, that's for sure.
Yep.
I am very impressed that he chose the Baker midsole when he put it back together. I'm very impressed that he did the work himself. I have not watched enough of his videos at this point, and I really need to do a deep dive on his channel. I don't know if YouTube will allow it, but maybe if he wants us to, maybe we'll try to put a link to his channel into the comments for this video. But I think that he's got some videos where he's showing the work that he does for resoles.
This is matching tongue leather. I'm looking at it again here. It is matching tongue leather, which would mean you wouldn't get enough to be able to tri-fold it. You would have to C-fold it. But I can tell.
I am impressed. I'm impressed by the kiltie that he cut and put in. It's pretty darn thick. It's more or less full height. I like that it's a little bit wider down at the bottom, that it's going outward more as it rounds around. So there's a lot to like about these boots, and a lot to like about what he did to them after he received them.
Yep.
Bravo.
Yep. JFJ Bakers. Like I said, I have a pair of Franks that has it, and I wish they would do it more. Unfortunately, it kind of broke the machine a little bit, so they won't do that again. But that's quickly become one of my favorite pairs of Franks and get some of the most wear. That insole leather, especially for insole midsoles, is absolutely fantastic. But on to the next pair.
And I do like the lack of a pull loop there. I am not a pull loop fan. I think that looks better and cleaner without it.
I do too, and unless they're just so tight you can't get them on. I which is funny because in talking to Tony, you'll actually find that he is a pull loop guy, shockingly enough. So there are those who do enjoy the pull loop more. But onto the, and maybe he'll end up having a pair that's got one. We'll see.
And then speaking of rebuilt whites Packers, this is another pair of Packers that I got off of eBay. Only with this pair, I decided that I wanted to have footbeds that were broken into my feet. So sent them off to whites for a full rebuild. These are on the 690 last. I had them relasted from 9D down to 9C. It's their brown leather. You got V-bar outsole, quad-bog heels. I also made these full-length kilties and dyed them and waxed them. Oh, and they kind of did a shitty job on the rebuild.
Ooh.
Cut through the rolled welt there in places. And I think there's, yeah.
Split up with a knife. Yep.
Had a little oopsie. A little bit of an oopsie doodle there, cutting through the vamp.
That's probably the awe from the Rapid E machine, to be entirely honest.
Got some weird splits in the rolled welt. I don't know. I decided to ultimately not care about it, because what am I going to do? Send them back for another rebuild? I mean, as I understand it, there's only so many times that they can run these stitches through these uppers. So
They kind of fucked that up a little bit too.
yeah, it is what it is. So there's those.
I mean, a lot of the same stuff there. I mean, like I said, his Kilty's good. But yeah, he's not wrong. I could see a couple other things that they messed up, and that particular pair, it's super noticeable. The SPI in the uppers is very different from everything they rebuilt. It's a pretty noticeable, like, eye-catching difference. The thread's not as matching as it probably should be either. So that's definitely a much older pair that got rebuilt. Like that might be like maybe an early 2000s or late 90s Packer that he had rebuilt. So there's quite a bit of difference there. Yes, they had some oopsie doodles. That poke isn't from a knife. It's actually from the awl and the Rapid E. So when for those of you who don't know, if you don't need to use a Rapid E machine, a lot of times they don't use the Rapid E machine because it goes in upside down. But the reason is on the Landis machines that they use that aren't the Rapid E's, that they don't need to punch through the really, really thick stuff like the 11 iron midsole, the slip sole, and the lug sole. So for a lot of the ones that have no slip sole and are just using like a V-bar or competition, they'll use the Landis machines instead. Because when you run the Rapid E machine, it's a hydraulic clutch. When it grabs onto the boot, you are not stopping that boot or manipulating that boot in that thing at all. Like the Rapid E just goes. You're just hoping and praying. On the Landis machines, you have a little bit more control on it, but there's still a lot of hoping and praying. And on that, however they set it in the machine when they let the clutch clamp down on it, since that's on the outside, they generally try to start on the inside. It probably got to the point where the upper wasn't being pulled enough, and enough of it got pushed out by the clutch that the awl just punched it as it punched the hole. So,
considering the pair that we just looked at being so similar, there isn't a lot to say here. It's a nice looking boot, of course, for all the same reasons as the previous pair. Did a good job with the tongue that he put in. I noticed that instead of casual, he chose the pointed this time around. So he either doesn't have a preference or has a preference in different situations, or whether he likes the pointy loggery Kilty versus the casual rounded. But yeah, Packers are great boots. Looks like he got a great deal on it. I'm guessing that he got it done long enough ago that he got a real good price on the rebuild. It's just a shame they made so many mistakes on it.
Yep. And it happens. I have a couple rebuilds from Frank's where some of the upper stitches didn't hit the same holes and whatnot, but this is what happens with the rebuild. Like, this is why when like you get a pair that someone's like, oh, I'll just buy a pair off eBay and rebuild it. I mean, there are some risks with it. If it's not going to be a pair you're going to beat the ever living fuck out of, it might not be the smartest plan.
This is one of those examples. I mean, we people complain about the perfection, and this is one of those situations where if I had gotten those boots, I'd have said the same thing he did. It's handmade, made by human beings, and there's going to be mistakes on a thick leather with the machinery that they need to use, and it is what it is. I wouldn't have returned it either.
Nope.
For what it's worth.
Yep. And like I said, that Rapid E machine, you try to stick your hand in there and stop it, it'll take your hand. It don't care. The hydraulic clutch has power. On to the next pair.
This is another pair of whites off of eBay. So this is a pair of 10-inch smoke jumpers on the 4811 last. We've got a lace-to-toe pattern here. Black work leather, I'm assuming.
It's definitely side L.
Now, I also resold these myself. Hand stitched through the midsole. V100 lug sole. I did the screws a little bit differently. I don't really have an ability to sew through the outsole like they do, and so instead of 3 screws up front, I did 5. They normally put the screws in these wider spaces, but I put them in between these tighter spaces because it seemed like to me like it more matched the front. But I did a little bit of a different profile on the heel there, the logger heel, where I squared off the midsole. But yeah.
Came out good. Looks like you also removed the slip sole. He didn't put a slip sole in with it. Like I said, overall he did a good job. I don't know if I quite care for that heel profile as much, but that is another a really important point there. So like, why do they use the slip soles in the PNWs? The main reason is so they don't have to stitch through the lug. That's a huge portion of it. That way they can just glue the lug down, put the screws in if they need to replace the lug. A lot of times when you get a lugged boot resoled, they don't remove the slip sole if it doesn't need to be, because there's no reason to re-outsole stitch it. So that repairability is a big portion of that. And also so you don't have to punch through that lug, because these machines are old. We talk about it a little bit in the videos of, Wesco has their stuff paid for, right? A big portion is these outsole machines, brand new, are over 6 figures. They are not cheap. None of these PNWs are going out and buying brakes, because Sutton Landis still exists. It's a company that still makes machines to this day. They're just extremely expensive.
I like that he's got the variety here with the lace to toe. And I like the eBay aspect of it. I like the idea of saving money and allowing somebody else to take the major costs, especially if you can do enough rebuilding to it to make it your own. So, I definitely applaud him for being able to do that and to do that. I like that he chose the black regular sole instead of the Red X or even
100%.
or the Red X or the White X or any of those. That's a solid sole that's going to last longer, better than the others, assuming you're walking on dirt or something, so that it's not necessarily killing you like it might be on concrete. I like what he did with the heel. I thought that was kind of a cool idea. I had never seen that before. A little bit of flatness before going into the rounded logger heel. I thought it was a cool idea, and I thought it played out well. So bravo to him for trying something new.
Yep.
With that. And if I was doing a rebuild, which hopefully one day I'll be doing my own rebuilds, I would have tried to put more nails in it. I like that he tried to put more in.
Yeah, no, I think the extra screws are a good idea, actually, especially since he's not using a slip sole, because his lug isn't attached to anything that's stitched at that point besides the midsole. So I definitely agree with that. And, like I said, I personally am not a big fan of the blogger, so that is kind of like a blogger logger heel. So if you're into that, I mean, a lot of people like that heel. I just don't personally care for it as much. I don't like the astuteness to the sharpness back to the astuteness, but I mean, overall I think it's a good balance with what else he has. Like I said, I personally lean away from the Seidel work leathers, but when you get into these eBay finds, that's all you're gonna get. You're not walking onto eBay and like, here's my $100 Shell Cordovan smoke jumpers that just ain't working for me no more, brother. It's not happening. So
I'm being drawn back to that JK one again. Another point that I kind of missed with him discussing the screws on this one is that screw that JK puts into the heel.
Oh God, yeah.
And that is, that's an interesting one, because that is like, if you looked at the underside of that cap, that is literally the only place that you could put a screw.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it's made, you couldn't put more in there if you wanted to. And it's not really very useful even where it is. It's just they tried to put a screw everywhere they could think of. And I do like that attempt, but it is fairly useless to put it there. It's not going to prevent any pulling up in places where it might pull up, which is what the screws are for. But I applaud them for trying to put an extra piece of hardware in there.
Yeah, because it's right next to a cavity is ultimately the problem. So you're still going to pull up around the cavity. So, yeah. You're not wrong. I guess if maybe you were like a lineman or someone who was making constant contact with the front of the breast of the heel, maybe it provides a benefit. I guess it's possible. I'm not sure if the lug sole is that common with linemen or not. I'm not sure. I don't know if it really makes a bit of a difference.
It'd be good to ask him his opinions on the different models since he's got them all. He's got the lace to toe.
Mm-hmm. Couple plain toes, couple packers.
The packer, and he's got the regular logger. So he's had kind of the main 3 styles of P&W boots.
Yeah, only thing he's missing is a cap toe. I don't think I've seen a cap toe yet. So
sure. Maybe it's coming.
Yeah, I was about to say that. It's like, we would talk about, maybe he's got a thing for packers. We might find in the rest of the video that he might have a thing for packers. Maybe there are 3 or 4 more packers in here. All right, on to the next boot.
Starting to get into the more dressy category. These are a White Stevens dress cap.
Whoa.
This is on their 50-50 last, with the 55 in the back and the MP in the front. I sort of feel an arch with these. It's certainly not as aggressive as a 55, but
man, I hope that's just the angle.
It's
Those
there.
heels
You'll
look
feel
2
it.
different heights.
I think it's camera angle.
Day-Night Sole.
Yeah, I hope so.
Not my favorite, but it's just a dress shoe. I'm not overly concerned about that. Natural Chrome Excel.
I like the Natural Chrome XL. It's my favorite Chrome XL by far.
Block heel, of course.
That's an interesting point. I didn't realize the Stevens came with that thin of a midsole on it. But yeah, I mean, I could see with that short of a heel, that thin of a midsole, they might not even put a arch piece in there at all.
No, there's an arch in there.
Is there?
It may be smaller, but that's the whole point of that last, which brings in an interesting trivia thing to me. Maybe other people realized it, and I'm not as smart as I think, but that 50-50 last is actually named after being 50% this and 50% that.
Yeah,
that's literally how they got the name for that last. It's 50% 55 and 50% MP or H&W.
No, MP's original name was the Berry last.
No, not H&W.
Yeah.
I said it wrong. The MP, which is
its original name was Berry, but it's based off the Northwestern, but the original name for it was the Berry last. If you talk to whites, they still call it the Berry last. Yep.
So I really, for quite a while, I really wanted this boot. I wanted it in a black, but I wanted this exact boot very, very badly because I wanted a true dress boot to wear when I had to wear a suit, whether it's a funeral or a wedding or maybe an interview. But every once in a while I got to put a suit on, and I wanted a real pair of dress boots. And this White Stevens was going to be it. It was the boot that looked the best to me. It still had the arch. And by the time I finally decided to pull the trigger, the prices had just gone up, and they weren't willing to do a half sole for me. And they weren't willing to do the leather that I wanted either. They had really tightened things down on, I was going through Baker's, and at that point they had really tightened things down on Baker's, and I had to abandon the order. And it was unfortunate because I had done it 6 months before. I think I would have gotten everything I wanted, but they've stopped giving bakers as much leeway and as much choice as they used to. But yeah, I really like this boot. I love the height of that block on that heel. I do think that they probably purposely have used a lighter duty materials and less of an arch material in it to bring it down a little bit. But that is a 55 last. They've just probably adjusted it a little bit to make it not as pronounced.
Yeah, well, I mean, they would have had to when they put the MP toe on it. So since MP toe has a different spring, the heel height and arch ratio have to be adjusted. They're all part of the same equation. So
it's a great leather. It's a great boot. Personally, I think it should be all eyelets.
Was that one all eyelets?
And this was, it was hooks, which is the way they normally do it.
Oh yeah. No, it's 5 and well, that's actually a different number of hooks too. Those are the cheaper hooks as well. Those aren't the nice studs. Well, I never noticed that before. Does the Stevens always come with the cheaper hooks?
I think that's the hooks they usually come with. I was going to order it with all eyes.
Oh wow!
I think at that point,
because those are different sized.
And...
Those are different sized eyelets too. Those aren't the regular sized eyelets either. I have never noticed that before.
I just love that Stevens so damn much. And now that you've got the picture back up, we can see that counter is 100% hidden, and I think that's classy as fuck.
Yeah, the internal
counter. That's another
counter.
thing that really pulled me towards that boot. And for anyone who's wondering, I have a boot on order from an Indonesian brand that's going to fill my dress boot needs and give me the options that I wanted. So whites, you lost.
Yeah.
You could have done just the smallest amount of choices for me that were not outlandish, and you would have had the sale. So, no soup for you.
Ain't no kidding. Only one thing I will say is I don't think he chose that liner, but that super white liner would not have been my first choice. Like, that is a pure white liner.
Well, it is nice that it's got a full liner.
Yes, no, that 100% just not white. That's an odd choice. Huh. Okie dokie.
It is. But honestly, I wouldn't have cared. Like,
no.
Who's seeing it for me, and it's a matter of that it's there.
I like colorful socks. Like, Darn Tough socks are colorful, and that would have stained the ever-living fuck out of those real fast.
I would have picked like a medium brown.
Yeah.
A darkish medium brown.
Hell, even just a natural leather color instead of white. You're going to sweat in those once, and they're going to turn slightly, egg color. Eggs, they paint eggs white, right? But like real eggs that aren't like painted white to make look good in the store vary from like a very dark like brown color to like a very like white or like yellowy orangey color. And I imagine you sweat them once and it's going to be like natural egg color.
And this was his first cap toe.
It was a brogued cap toe. It was kind of a rough broguing. I don't remember, like, I'll go back to that point again. I don't remember the whites broguing like having that big of a gap. That eats up a ton of the cap toe, which takes away a lot of the flexibility in the cap toe. And you can see it. That's why he's getting this double bump. That double bump is because of that.
The amount of space between the bottom of the quarter and the back of the cap. There's a lot of space there. So it's abbreviated. So it shouldn't be affecting movement too much.
It is, but he's getting a double bump. You see right here, just in front of that front of the stitches on the broguing, he's getting the dual bump from it that is often caused by a cap toe that's got too many stitching lines in it. But I mean, it's a cool boot. I really like the leather. It'd be nice if it wasn't brogued like that. Just a nice 2-row would look. I don't know. Just my opinion.
That's what I was going to do. I was going to do a 2-row instead of the baroquing, but I wasn't going to do a cap on a Stevens.
Yep. No, I definitely agree with that. I think that is a better dress look. But on to the next boot. Oh, here we go.
And here we have a pair of White's MPs. MP last, obviously. This is in British Tan Chrome Excel.
Why is that midsole a different color?
I can never remember which one, the Sherman or the M1, is the 2-piece versus the 1-piece, but this one's the 2-piece.
This is the Sherman. It has no
Got a
cap
2332 outsole. I love that outsole, by the way. It's kind of got a cushiness to it.
The SPI seems lower than normal.
Yeah, they did
Probably
that for a
should
while.
have sized these down half a size.
Let me pause it for a second. This was common for boots that they're making in that 2020 to 2021 period. This like really elongated stitch. My pair from 2020 had this on ones that could never get fitted right.
They're a little bit long, not overly,
MP toe, that's understandable.
but
One of the things that stands out that I can't quite figure out is, let's see if I can
the
get to the point.
2-piece.
So
Sherman or the M1.
this is so the M1 is called the M1 because it's a one-piece back toe, and the M1 usually has a cap toe on it because it's meant to be an Iron Ranger clone. This definitely is a Sherman. And there was another Sherman model, I can't remember the name of it, that had a cap toe. But yeah, the M1 MPC or whatever, that's the one that has the one piece. It's a pure Iron Ranger clone. But I'm wondering, I don't see it as much the other boot. Why is the midsole? Because this is a dual midsole due to how they do their half soles. But like, look, they're different colors, like completely different colors. Like the extra midsole for the half soles significantly lighter than all the other layers.
I think it's two different vendors.
Probably is. Yeah, and that's probably because of the half sole. Just that stuck out to me because I don't think the other boot is dealing with that as much. Yeah. See, look, this one, everything from that down is what. Wow, that's just stuff that sticks out to me. But yeah, I mean, like I said, this is the MP is a boot that really got popular with whites, and they sell a ton of these. And I do like the British Tan Chrome XL. That is a shade of Chrome XL that oftentimes comes out very different colors. Like you really see a wide variance in that particular one. I don't know what the reason is, but that particular color, like most of Chrome XLs are pretty consistent in color. That British Tan I've seen be everywhere from like what I consider a light brown to a very medium brown, like a step under cinnamon wax flesh brown. It's just strange in that particular one.
Which outsole number is that?
So that is it's 2332, and that is oftentimes called the iron weight mini lug. So it is in the Vibram book. A lot of it people call it like the iron weight or the middle weight. So Steve from Beto's Leatherworks had problems figuring out what sole this was for a long time because it's got a different name from a lot of the Vibram distributors than what's in the catalog. And for some reason it was called
This is
the
one of the
iron weight.
ones made in Italy, isn't it?
I would have to look at the catalog, but it might be. Because strangely enough, the 430, right, is made in America, but the 435, which is the half sole version, is made in Italy. Of the mini, that's why no one can get the mini lug half sole. The lugs also aren't the same on it either, too. It's very strange.
I really like the looks of this one.
Mm-hmm.
This next to the Dr. Souls, this might be my second favorite half sole.
It's a lot softer material too than most of them. Like I can deal with this mini lug way more than I can deal with the 430 or the 435. It's just a nicer sole all around. The only downside to it, and I mean downside is really, whatever you take. Let me see if I can find a good picture of it. Is two things right here. One, people have to decide if they're going to shave this edge or not off to have a clean edge. But number two, this one has no like real protections internally, like a lot of them do against like these lugs shearing off, which is fine. I mean, most people aren't going to be using it in the way. The heel really isn't really meant to be nailed in either. It's really meant to be glued on. But I mean, whoop-de-doo, just use a different heel. that's meant to be nailed. But if Dr. Souls wasn't an option yet, this one would be another one that's high up on my list, especially when people cut, like, so Steve from Beato's Leatherworks cuts these off on the side outside of the stitch so that it doesn't look like a lug from the side profile, and it actually looks very classy once you cut it in a little bit.
Yeah, it's smart, very, very smart move. Everybody should do it.
Yeah,
and
I wish
that's.
I wish I had one.
That's
prepared.
why the day and nights work so well. Is
100%.
Because the extra down there can't be seen from the side, so it looks more like a proper dress shoe.
I wish I had one of Steve's, like, if I would have known this was here, I would have had one of Steve's videos ready, but he cuts a sliver on the edge before he stitches it, so he stitches on the flat part, and like I said, from the side view you can't tell it's a lug at all, and it looks very classy. Like, you have to actually lift your foot up to see it, just because, I mean, the gap's there, but I mean, he's only taken off, like, yay so much from it. So unless your face is on the ground from that downward looking angle, you're not going to see it.
Solid pair of boots. I really like them. It's it's continuing in the idea of trying to cover all the bases. He's not doing the same thing over and over again, but he is sticking with high quality boots and changing little things here and there. So he's probably at this point got an extremely good idea of what he likes and what he doesn't, what he'll do in the future.
Yeah, like, so the only thing I don't like about this boot is the last that it's on. I've had bad luck with this berry last. I hate the feel of it, but I do like it's a 3/4 gusset tongue. I do think that's one thing that, for casual boots, that's not so much of a bad idea, is you don't really need a fully gusseted tongue. And if you're going to use upper leather in your tongue, I can tell you right now, as a person that has purchased upper leather that matches in my Badalassi Pueblo, the break-in on that fucking sucked. So a non-split, like, regular, like, 3/4 gusset or half gusset would have been much preferable compared against what I actually got. So if you do want matching leather, I do think that's cool that they offer that option. Like I said, personally, I can't stand that MP/berry last.
3/4 is a nice middle ground, but it seems like it'd be hard to make sure that 3/4 is going to tuck and fit and not have a hot point in it.
It's always 50-50. It depends on the person. It can always be, I mean, once again, you can always C-fold it, just like the fully gusseted ones. You can always C-fold it. And the C-fold is going to have a little bit of, I mean, the tri-fold can have a hot point too. I mean, once again, you want to get some 3.5 ounce veg tan split for your boot, it's going to have some hot points, even on the tri-fold. So you are going to have some hot points. And my ankles do set weirdly far forward, so I do have that problem on whites on break-in a little bit more than I do with the other brands. So that's what it is. It depends on if you can't deal with the kilty look and you got to have that match, and that's what happens. Alrighty, on to the next boot. I also seen a theme of a lot of whites. He definitely likes his whites, which that's a good point. Maybe I should bring that up now, because we hear that a lot. Some people really like the fit of their whites and do not like the fit of their, like, Nicks and Franks as much. Some people really like their Franks and Nicks and can't stand their whites. Their patterns, like while Nicks and Frank's patterns are very close, Frank's patterns have had some refinement when he opened up for himself, where he made some adjustments for common complaints of people, especially when it comes to width. You'll feel that Frank's fit just about a half size wider. If you have a narrow instep and a narrow waist, you will probably love your whites over your Nicks and Franks. If you're like me, you will not like your whites over your Nicks and Franks. Like, that waist instep area is a bitch for me to break in when it comes to whites. That is my least favorite part about a pair of whites. And I actually have a buddy who he wears 9.5 F and he loves his Franks. He actually had to send his whites back for a refund because he couldn't even get his foot into them. So he got that Coach Rambler build, and basically Baker's was going to have to cut the tongue for him because he couldn't get his foot into it. There was not enough space for his instep and ankle to get in with the way they do the C-fold tongue. It just wasn't big enough.
At the beginning of his journey, he probably hadn't even heard of Franks yet.
It's possible. Yep.
And considering how many that he's bought used, there's a lot more whites available on eBay than there are Franks.
Did he say the Stevens and the MPs were used? He didn't say anything. Do you know?
No, he didn't.
Okay.
He didn't say.
I mean, he might have got those used too, for all we know, for the people at home. We're not sure. He didn't say anything in the video. I just didn't know if maybe he'd said something to Jeff about it. So, but yes, that is a good point. If you were eBay thrifting, you're going to find whites as your first. Even Alex was the same way. So,
shout out Alex.
Yep. On to the next boot. Curious what's left. We're down to the next 6 minutes, and this seems to be his more recent stuff. I don't know if Jeff watched this beforehand. I did not watch this beforehand, so I'm seeing this at the same time everybody else is. Besides that first pair, we did do a test of this, obviously, to make sure the sound came through.
And then rounding out the whites category, this is definitely my favorite pair of whites that I own. Pair of 350 Cruisers on the 55 last in dark brown waxed flesh.
I love the Kilty contrast. We need more Kilty contrast in the world.
I've had these since January of this year, and it's currently September, so they've definitely got the most wear of any of my boots.
It shows.
Developing a lot of rolls and getting this waxed flesh patina.
On that point, while he's talking, anyone who does get wax flesh will notice that wax flesh does roll and crease in ways other leathers don't. So don't let the extra rolls and creases in this be like, oh man, he wears those so much more. That's just a consequence of that heavily waxed outside layer. I mean, he obviously does wear these more, but as you can see, how many of the splits in the V-bar and the stitches, that's just what happens with waxed flesh.
V-bar, outsole. Just kind of playing around with these English bridal chestnut kilties. 55 last, of course. Hand sewn stitch down. That whole deal.
You're going to see here in the picture, but the hand sewn, the Norwegian roll welt here, for the waxed flesh ones, it looks like poop in person, and you can see it here too. It's really lumpy. It's all over the place. Another downside of wax flesh.
So that does it for the white.
Oh, and he's at the end. But yeah, so I mean that's a downside of wax flesh. I mean, it's just one of those things that happens. It's not a it looks crappy with a rolled top. I almost want to go grab my pair to show, but it looks crappy with a rolled top, and the Norwegian rolled does not look good. It's just one of the realities of wax flesh. It's not the right leather for that task.
I'm guessing from the way that he said it that he bought these things new.
That one does seem like that would be the case.
And it's got a C-fold. So that does kind of surprise me. Were we able to see enough of the gusset to see whether it matched?
Yes, it does. That one did. Yep, I can go back to it, but that one definitely is the same exact leather. And my whites bounty hunters and cinnamon wax flesh, which is very similar to this, has exact same setup, but it's a matching leather.
So that's why I had to do a C-fold. When they do the matching like that, they don't give you enough width to do the trifold anyway. Yep. So he didn't have a choice there.
No, and I have the whites cruisers in Tuscanello and Navy horse rump from Baker's, and they both have to have C-folds as well with matching tongues. So
that's a long low counter cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so on the cruiser, it is a Type 1 style boot where they do the commander one and see, White's does this farther than everybody else. So Frank's does cross the vamp like this, but yeah, this is the cruiser is almost basically a cut down smoke jumper on the 55 instead of the 4811. It's not using the same pattern and setup that the semi dress is. It's really based off of a smoke jumper.
They definitely look like a favorite pair of boots. I mean, he said that they're his favorite boots recently, and there's no surprise there. Yep. They look like an all around comfortable boot in every way. The way that it's rolling and the way that it's constructed and the leather that he chose. I am a little bit surprised that the wax flesh isn't showing a little bit more personality at this point, but it's going to get there, and it's going to look even better when it does.
Well, some of that's because dark brown has a much darker undertone. So cinnamon, even though it's brown, has actually a yellow undertone. It's a very bright undertone. And so it shows through more. But we talked about this, I think, in a video recently. I don't remember which one. But when it comes to these wax fleshes, because of the way they do it, and it's got like a Venetian base and whatnot, you don't. Oh, I think it was with John's collection, actually, with that cinnamon wax flesh, because he got all matching panels. And a lot of times you don't always see matching panels between these because the wax layers aren't consistent. It's like my cinnamon wax flesh at this point almost looked like two different boots, because one boot very clearly had a much thinner wax layer on it than the other. So he might have got a particularly thick wax layer too.
I mean,
yeah.
Frank tries super hard to make sure that every boot comes from the exact same hide. And that might not be true of some of the other builders.
That's true too. Yeah.
So that's going to make a difference as well.
Yep. Yeah. I said my cinnamon wax flesh are whites, and mine do look like two different color boots at this point. Like one is a lot nappier than the other. One has just a slightly different tone. One's a little bit more yellow. One's a little bit more red. But them's the ropes.
I like the playing around that he's done with the different color kiltie. I think it's a nice contrast.
Oh, 100%. But that's just a man speaking to my heart, because I don't put matching kilties in hardly anything. So
most of mine do match, but I like the contrast on this one.
Yeah, no, I'm a contrast person. Like I said, I pretty much every pair I have is a contrasting color. I think the lightest contrast I have is the Black Burrow Buttero. I have an olive Badalassie waxy no-show kiltie in it, which is the only that's just a very light contrast. But I mean, I'm the guy with the red, white, and blue bison boots, so I'm pretty sure matching went out the window ages ago. I do have a pair of Franks in medium brown harness that has a cognac bison kiltie in it, so that's a slightly different one, and it's actual cognac.
Not only do I normally match, but I match more to the lowers than the uppers, if there's a difference.
No.
Like, for example, I've got a pair of black boots that are rough out on the bottom and smooth on the top. Most of the world would have chosen a smooth kiltie, match the quarters, but I chose a rough out kiltie to match the lowers. And it's because of the leg openings that I have. I choose a 10-inch leg opening on my pants, and I don't roll them. So you're not seeing a single bit of uppers because I'm wearing lowers.
Them. Yeah.
So you're seeing like this much of the kiltie, and I want it to be the same as everything else that's visible.
Makes sense. I mean, I think most people with two-tone boots kind of do the same thing too. Like John did that on his boot with the cinnamon wax flesh and russet combos. He went with a russet kiltie to go with it. So, alrighty, on to the next pair. I think after this we are moving away from whites, I think is what he said. So let's see what the next pair happens to be.
Sounded like it.
So first up in the Franks department, there's a pair of off-the-shelf Willshires in brown domain. I recut the kiltie on these to be the casual kind.
Got some kilties.
Natural edges, rolled top, dogger heel. I love this brown domain leather. It feels real chrome excelish. That welt stitching just pops. 430 mini lug.
My greatest nemesis, the 430.
lines from the original kiltie. Oh, speaking of kilties, this is mildly interesting, I guess. So this is my twist on Jeff's kiltie thing, where he orders kilties with no holes in them and then punches the holes closer towards the outside to lock it in place to prevent sagging. If you've already got them, and they've already got the holes cut in the stock positions, you can always punch new holes closer to the outside and then just lace them like that. And then they'll stay in place, and then you'll have this look where you've got the lace going across still. So, I don't know. That's an option. If somebody's already got the kilties and they're sagging, then you can do that and still use them.
That's a good point.
So, yeah.
I'm the one that got a shout out in this video.
Yeah, I mean it's a good way of making use of the kiltie, because it's tough once the holes are already there. I mean, I if you had the right colored laces, like if you're going with a nice contrasting lace, I think something like that could actually maybe even add a little bit of flair. Now he's just using standard out of the box laces, so I don't think it really does a whole lot for it. But like, you know, if he had like, I don't know, like golden yellow laces to go with it, I think having that hole there, like having a pre-punch pair that you add the extra holes, could actually add a little bit of flair to the kiltie itself.
It still fixes the function of the kiltie staying in place, but obviously doesn't totally fix the aesthetics because of the extra two holes showing. So yeah, I mean, if you've already, like you said, if you've already got it, it's a better choice.
Yeah, I just think he needs to add a cool pair of like contrasting laces with it to really take advantage of those holes being there. So that's a case where I could see if you have them already, where it, you know, if you, for example, I've always liked on my black boots running the Guarded Goods golden yellow wheat kiltie or laces. They look fantastic on black boots, just like their light gray laces look great on black boots too. That would be an example where, you know, getting a pair that had holes punched in it already could be of a benefit.
It sets my brain in motion as to how to fix that issue of the holes if you were in that situation. I'm not sure what I'd do yet, but you know, sometimes they make those, I don't know what you call them, but those ornamental pieces.
Oh yeah, lace decorations.
Right?
Yeah. You put on your laces.
I can't say I'm a really big fan of those per se, but like that's kind of where my brain is starting to head. Something that could be put there. Maybe you've got a daughter that likes doing all those braided bracelet type things, and you could ask her to make a special braided little piece of specific colors that you could actually put into that area and have a touch of your daughter in your boots. I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but I would try to do something to turn that lemon into lemonade.
Oh yeah, and like I said, there's lots of cowboy little ornaments that are meant for stuff like that too. You could easily integrate into there. That they a lot of times just stake onto the front of the toes and stuff. But it's definitely a spot for extra customization if you're looking for it.
Great. You know, we didn't really say much about the boot itself yet, but I mean, what's there to say? It's a great all around, solid, simple, quality boot.
Yep.
You know, there's nothing really incredible to say, and certainly nothing negative to say. It's everything you want out of a high quality, somewhat, you know, semi dress boot that you can wear in just about any situation you can think of. Put up with anything that you do.
I think I've also showed at least 10 pairs of Willshires on this channel too, because the majority of my boots fall under the Willshire pattern. So we have covered the Willshire specifically at nauseum on this channel. That's, like I said, I don't know if many of your boots fall technically under that pattern, but like I said, the most of mine do. If it's not a Monkey or a Riker, it's technically a Willshire for me.
These names are really somewhat arbitrary. I don't know how much I've said in these BiB videos, but I know that I've said it a lot in the groups. These names are really just popular options that are put together and given a name. But we do generally think of anything that's somewhat on the fancy semi-dress side as just generically being a Willshire.
Yep. And that comes from when, if you talk to Franks, like pattern wise, they have type 1, type 2, and Willshire. And every boot falls into one of those. You either get a type 1 style pattern, which is a specific heel counter, slip sole combo, midsole thickness. Type 2, which is a slightly thinner setup of the type 1. And then the Willshire, which technically has a packer heel counter.
Wait, if you were designing a pair of Franks, assuming it's not a monkey and assuming that it's not a Riker, and of course not a Patriot, but if you're designing any pair of Franks as an a la carte and you're just putting together the choices that you make, and you gave me those choices, I could write it down in 3 or 4 different ways as to the way they get there. This is a Willshire with this changed and that changed and that's added. This is a type 2 with this added and this added and this added. This is a front range with this changed and that changed and that. I mean, they're all, it's the same thing with addition or subtraction of various choices. But yeah, we associate the Willshire as being the more semi-dress, fancier.
Yeah. From the production perspective, everything that's not a type 1 or a type 2 is a Willshire. And that's just kind of the reality. Like when it comes to their sheets and whatnot, front range, high office, or front office, whatever it was, the Atlas, all these things, those are all Willshire patterns, which is the packer heel specifically with a type 2 pattern. The only reason the Willshire is different than the type 2 is they have 2 different heel counters. That's it. Sorry, heel counter covers, I should say. It's being specific. But I mean, like I said, everything at Frank's is type 1 or type 2. The Willshire's just got a packer heel counter cover. It actually even uses the same thickness and midsole as the type 2. So, but for anyone wondering why we're not talking much about the Willshire specific, it is a stock Willshire, and like I said, we have talked about the Willshire on this channel ad nauseum. Like I said, half my collection's Willshires. So obviously we love the Willshire boot.
I've got Rikers and I've got monkeys, but everything else, no, you know what? I can't say that. I've got a type 1 that's made out of all black bison.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a type 2 that's half black bison. There's no way to call either one of those a Willshire.
Yep.
But yeah, the rest of them certainly be considered Willshires.
Yep. Like I said, I
usually call them type 2s, but because that's where I started, that was my blank canvas. Yep. But yeah, they probably should be called Willshire.
Yeah. I mean, and like I said, I have a type 1 and a type 2 as well in my work boots, but the majority of mine are Willshires. So I don't know. I mean, at this point, I think I'm catching up in the monkeys that I might not. That might not be a true statement anymore.
We might have 2 left. Maybe it's just 1.
3 minutes left here, so we'll see.
Then we have Type 2 Highlanders. So I optioned these with a toe cap,
Tan
black thread, black hardware, black welt stitching. I did the honey lug sole on these just to see how the cushion was.
If anyone wonders how I knew it's Tan Teton immediately, Tan Teton's the only Seidel offering that's a pigmented finish and not an oil aniline dye finish, so it's super obvious to the eye the second you know what it is. If anyone thought it was olive, this is just the color Tan Teton gets to after it gets wet a couple times.
On it, and I like
jumped
it okay.
out at me.
Yeah, it's the only pigment finish from Seidel, so it's usually quite obvious for what it is.
Kind of matches or not matches, but goes with the tan Teton upper leather. It's not too bad. Boy, I am beating the hell out of these. I'm not trying to.
Once again, if Everett, I know you'll watch this at some point. You're not really beating these up. This is just what happens with the pigment finish. This dye doesn't penetrate into the leather at all, so it's all completely surface. Like you could literally beat this off with an office chair. Like that's probably not a good phrasing now that I hear myself say it aloud. But this could easily be removed, like driving in a car. It's just a pigment finish. That this is reality of all pigment finishes. Like unlike a mill dye, which is a surface layer dye, like Chrome XL's mill dyed, which a lot of us would call T-coring these days. A pigment finish is just on the top, so the second it's scraped off, you're not going to get like color variation. And going back to it, it's also why you see this like kind of nasty creasing here on the backstay counter cover on the right one, on the backstay cover. That's also a result of pigment or of a pigment finish. It's just the fact that pigment finishes don't allow it to flex.
.55 last. There's your honey lug, of course. Sort of developing a little bit of roll on there. It's obviously much harder to flex the toe with the toe cap. But that's those.
So obviously you are seeing the one downside to tan Teton. It turns kind of olive when it gets wet. Not really much you can do about that. I think in the community,
not necessarily a negative.
It can be for some people. It just depends what you're looking for. A lot of people want tan Teton because it's natural. It's one of the reasons why Frank's has russet harness on hand, and that's just because something that's a little bit more natural than tan Teton. It is a pigment finish, so it can crack, it can flake. I think someone in the community asked recently with my natural shinkies about is it tan Teton or not, and I tried to very nicely say no, because someone else asked me for a picture, like, can you have a picture of what those look like? I was like, I don't really want to show you because you're gonna want to buy it, and that was like a one-time deal that'll never come back again. But I mean, overall, like I said, this is another kind of stock boot. Honey's obviously a great choice. There's very few situations that I can think of. I don't know. I can even, unless you need what like wildfire rated, or you want black honey, which is white X. Honey's always a great look, especially on natural edge. It's hard to beat honey, so that's a good choice. Tan Teton's a little stiffer than some of the others. It's not quite the same oil tan process, so it is a little stiffer than your standard Seidel work leather, but
I think the tan Teton shines best as a rough out. I think it is a fantastic rough out. Reminds me of the old original Timberlands, the 1061 or whatever it was called. Really, really love it. As a smooth out, it's not always my favorite. I really like that this one is turned into more of a green. And it actually makes me like it more than I usually like the smooth out tan Teton. I like that he is continuing the variety of choosing different choices and what works best for him. In this case, he's gotten his first honey. The honey obviously has its pros and cons. It's more comfortable, but doesn't last as long. It's, you know, the honey or the black honey, as I call it, the white X, are definitely my choices for comfort. I still think they last a reasonable amount of time. I like what he did with his kilties. I like that they're the full height. I like that he has put the little slits in there. I had trouble deciding whether the bottom kilty area was him doing what he said before, like I do, and putting the additional 2 holes, or whether he had actually just placed it backwards at that level. He did the trifold, which, I like. I'm pretty sure that he did the trifold with that previous Willshire, but
He did, yeah.
remember noticing.
No, he did.
Frank's always gives us that extra width in that gusset area that the other ones don't always give you, so that you have the room to do that proper fold. Looks like an extremely comfortable boot. Looks like a great choice to me. It's just a solid all around boot. I would have done my my 4 stitch cap toe without the space instead of the 2, but that's just me.
I'm a 2 guy. I really prefer the 2 row toe cap personally. So, man, speaking to my heart with that one. Let the leather do the speaking, not the stitching.
Great choices.
Yep. Alrighty. Looks like we probably did. They go that speed. There's 2 left, but like I said, we didn't watch this, so we'll see. Maybe there's 4.
And last, but yet probably the furthest from least.
Oh, here we go.
Are the Frank's 8-inch front range with a lace-to-toe pattern. And these are in Wicket and Craig English Bridal Chestnut. I'm saving these for the patina Stitch Down Thunderdome, which is why they have no wear on them.
Okay, well, I can tell you on this pair, Jeff, just looking at them, he definitely did do the kilty thing. There's nothing in the middle, so he definitely had these unpunched and punched them himself.
He did.
Yeah.
He either asked them specifically for no punch, or he ordered on his own a matching kilty that he customized. One of the 2, yes.
Just judging by the side view, they look to be the same thickness as the uppers, so I bet you he got these from Frank's.
Yeah, I think he asked Frank's for no holes.
Yeah, they're
bravo.
They're too close to be a coincidence. All right, continuing.
Natural edges, of course.
Did a half sole.
Dogger heel.
Oh wow, Frank's can get the 32.
23-32 outsole.
23-32 in.
Oh, nice.
These are on the 77 last. Therefore, half size down. Full-length English Bridal Chestnut kilties.
I will say, for a C width, especially after seeing Brian's pair, I did not expect the 77 toe to be that big. Remember how we kind of had a thought that maybe the narrower widths on the 77 maybe looked a little different? Because he's a 9C. I saw it stamped in a couple of the other boots. Just a random thought that came out.
They do look pretty different on the inside than the outside. Mm-hmm. I took that picture, and I looked at the boot after I took that picture for you.
Yeah.
And it did look a lot narrower on the inside than I expected.
Yeah, I mean, these look a lot stubbier than I would think, though, too. So.
Sorry, we're having an internal conversation because we took some photographs with the camera buried all the way inside of the boot with the flash on, so that we could see the very, very front of the toe area from the inside. That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
So yeah, that's it. That's the collection as of now. Got a lot of boxes checked. Decently well-rounded collection. I guess one thing I'm kind of lacking in is exotic leathers. It's mostly
Oh, he touched on it. When it comes my recommendation time, we are going heavy in the exotic leathers. At least he's recognized it already.
It's like work leathers and a couple chromic cells thrown in there. Wax flesh. I guess wax flesh is a chromic cell anyway, but hell, this is probably the most exotic leather I have, and it's not even that great. But decent variation on heights, outsoles, lasts, whatnot. Lace to toe patterns. Got a couple of those thrown in there. Obviously, I'm lacking in monkey, Riker. Don't have things like that, but you know, who knows what the future may hold. So yeah, that's
the end of the collection. This is my favorite of his so far.
I'll jump in and start this time. I mean, he just nailed everything that I've been saying all the way along with his collection. He's touching all the bases. He is trying everything out as he goes along. Solid boots, solid leather. The Wicked and Craig, he's gonna fucking love it. I don't see any stitches out of place. I love that he ordered the kilties the way that he did. It doesn't really mean much except for aesthetics, but that really, really to me makes that boot pop. To have those holes properly spaced underneath the eyelets for himself. Full length, full height kiltie. And that's a home run boot, and it'll do well in the dome.
I would agree. The only thing I would say about that particular boot is, brother, Tuscanello horse rump. If you're going for the dome, fuck the Wicket and Craig. Tuscanello. It's got your same color shade, and it's gonna patina so much more. Like, so just so you know, and I don't know if you're aware of this or not, Everett, but English Bridle is another pigment top leather. It is not a dyed-in leather, so you're not gonna quite get the patina Thunderdome variants that wins those contests. Like the wax flesh guys and the other like horse rump kind of guys do, but Tuscanello horse rump, it was your win.
He's getting there, man. He's getting there.
He is. Don't worry. Wait till it comes recommendation time. We're really going to blow his boot budget.
His whole entire collection is headed in the perfect direction. It's started in the right place, and it's going in the right direction. He will end up with a pair of Rikers. He will end up with a pair of monkeys, and he will end up with some of the fancier leathers.
Yep.
He's getting there.
Recommendation number 1, Riker Law Bison. You've got every other work pair. Fucking home run this thing. That's all you're missing. Pick whatever height you want. You want 5-inch, you want 10-inch, doesn't matter. Riker's your plan. Like that's the biggest thing. Like, because your collection seems more work focused. Let's be entirely honest. But like the recommendation for the next one is 100% Law Riker. Dr. Souls. Trust me, Dr. Souls.
Yeah, similar recommendations. He needs a Law Bison in some respect, and let's see what else. What else?
I mean, like I said,
I don't want to say the horse rump because it is expensive, and I realize that it's expensive. Maybe a Latigo.
Yeah. Okay. I go with that. Yeah, and that might have been better for the dome too. Like a oiled tan Latigo is a very similar color to that chestnut, or maybe well, I mean, obviously the chestnut's much darker in the oiled tan Latigo, but an oiled tan Latigo to the English bridle chestnut are very close in color. That could have potentially been a really good choice in that particular pair. But like I said, yeah, like from the work focus, straight up Law Tanning Riker is what you were missing. If you were to do a monkey and it wasn't in horse rump, oiled Latigo, chestnut specifically.
I think you got to do a monkey.
Yeah, we don't see too many monkeys in chestnut either, so it'd be a perfect monkey.
I wonder if they've still got the Horween blue.
No. They have the Cavalier Ink Chrome XL, but they do not have the Dublin. The cobalt blue Dublin.
Dublin.
Yep.
Sorry, my brain was going.
Yep.
I would have recommended, just based on what the areas that he hasn't covered, that blue Dublin could be really cool in a monkey. But I know the monkey is an acquired taste. It might not be his acquired taste.
He's got enough lace to toe. It's got to be acquired enough. Those are pretty close.
True.
It's just in his side. It's just an extra eyelet. It's not even 2 extra eyelets. So I mean, he's close enough. Yeah, like I said, chestnut oil Latigo monkey. I'm just gonna go crazy with it and say olive green, or that moss green Riker, with maybe like a blue or a dark forest green canvas. Dr. Soul's army green outsole. Let's really get this guy going. Yeah, man, you gotta try the Dr. Soul's. If you like the 2332, you're gonna love the Dr. Soul's, hands down. But yeah, I mean, that's definitely what you're missing from your collection so far, since your stuff's a little bit more work focused.
He could do a monkey with natural waxed flesh and have the panels be cinnamon waxed flesh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that could be a cool look.
Yeah, if you really wanted more wax flesh, that would be a good way of going about it. I would definitely, if you're going to do mixing like that, stay away from the dark brown wax flesh, and I would stay away from the black wax flesh, because I don't think either of those really patina in the same nice way that the cinnamon and the natural wax flesh do. They definitely just, they look better. Now, Grail boot. I've got you covered on this one, brother. You want a Creosote 7. It's the blue you're missing. It's a service boot style you like, and it can easily fill that gap between a Stevens and the other MP boots you got. It's expensive. It's blue. Kind of covers your height. You seem to like stuff that's slightly higher. Creosote 7's called the 7 because it's 7 inches. It's tall, one of the tallest boots he makes.
I don't have a good Grail because I was going to basically say Creosote. So he already covered that. I guess for Grail, for me, I would just say a horse rump in whatever brand that you prefer at this point between White's, Frank's, and Nick's.
Yep.
Which I would guess is Frank's, but am impartial.
I would say Shell, but Jeff is right. You're going to struggle to get any of those guys to work with Shell anymore. It's just not a fan of theirs. Too easy to damage, too easy to stain, blah, blah, blah. So if you step away from the PNWs, you could maybe look at Shell as an option. I think Brian the Bootmaker just did a Shell release of something he did at the Brogue store in, I think it's San Francisco, somewhere in California. But yeah, man, Creosote 7, I think that's right up your alley. If he still made it, I would have recommended the Beatnik Monk, because I also kind of feel like that's right up your alley too. That's fucking up my alley. I wish I'd bought that boot when it was still available. But yeah.
Great collection, great direction, great choosing the order in which you presented them. Great Lazy Susan, and you did a good job with vocalizing everything and showing it. I think this is really the ultimate way to present a collection to be discussed. Bravo! I couldn't imagine doing it any better.
Yeah, I'm interested what people in the comments think of the two methods, because I think me and you operate a little bit better with the pictures. We're not quite as clunky as we were with the video. Maybe that's just a little practice. That might just be overthinking, because I do feel like I was a little clunky with the video in parts. It's a little bit more difficult for me to make sure the audience sees the screen too with that as well. But I also understand that not everyone presenting their correction is going to have the ability to do it in that way. So I get that that's not available for all of them. But like I said, we'll have one other style that'll be coming at some point. So you have to really let us know which one of these hit, or if you even like these at all. Maybe nobody likes these collection videos. I don't know. when I talked to Jeff into doing this, he was on the fence about how well these have gone so far, but I'm sure now after doing 2 of them, he could probably see where I was coming from with these. And I think these are great point in time content because they do 3 things specifically. They let you see, because once again, you don't have to show your whole collection. Like, he doesn't have to get the whole closet out for this. And who knows, maybe none of these guys have so far, right? But you get to see a good point in time, which is always fun. It gives people lots of ideas for stuff they've been trying to visualize. Because we talked about this a little bit in the other one, but some people can see in their mind what they think this is going to look like, and they can take a look at a couple things and just see the perfect boot. But that's not most people. And then there's people who like draw their stuff out in paint or go look for 100 examples and lay all the pictures next to each other and put the pieces together in their mind once they've visualized each part individually. And those are different skill sets, different mindsets, and different just cognitive abilities, right? And there's no reason to put everybody in the same basket. So I do think they're perfect for letting people really see what can be.
I definitely wasn't sure how it would go. I wasn't sure how the length would go. I wasn't sure how the interaction would go. I wasn't sure that I wouldn't end up being too negative. I think humans in general have a tendency to be a little bit negative and to pick things apart. So I didn't want to be disingenuous, but at the same time, I didn't want to slam people. And so far, these first 2 have worked out extremely well. This video, like I said, I really love the way that he presented it. I love the way that he had the Lazy Susan, the way that he mounted his camera, the way that he discussed his choices and what was going on with the boot. The downside to this way is that we have to remember all of our comments until we hit pause, until he's done with that presentation. And as you saw with the JK, I had to reference back twice things that I forgot to say at the end of him presenting that boot. I said it later as I remembered, and it occurred to me that I had forgotten something I meant to say. And it's kind of hard when you're doing a video to write notes, and kind of detracts from the video. So that is the negative, I think, of the video form, is remembering all your comments.
And that might just be a experience thing too. We might get better at that. Because like I said, there's a little bit, so you guys at home you're kind of seeing as I'm going back and forth. Sometimes I'm letting us talk over the video that's on, or the picture that's on the screen as it's paused. Sometimes I'm trying to minimize it and bring it down to where you can see our faces, and it's not consistent throughout. And that's just me struggling to decide at times, like when it makes sense. Cause like sometimes I didn't want to talk while he was talking, so I'd pause. Sometimes it felt like it was a good time to interject. That'll get smoother over time. This is still very much test format, right? So it's just a little bit of a reality there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I maybe no one else is willing to do a collection video in that way, and this is never something we have to visit again in that aspect. That's hard to know. So we'll see. See how well people like this. Maybe people hate these collection things. Maybe just only me and Jeff that's up here having fun, and everybody else is having a terrible time. Hopefully not, but
man, fuck this shit.
I hope that's not how that works out, but I mean, it could be. I don't know. Anything's possible.
All right, we've reached the end. We've got an hour and a half from that. I can't believe it.
An hour 40 minutes actually. I told you I thought these collection videos would go longer than it seemed like they would, just because of the interludes that we have between them, and I mean there's a lot to unpack here. It's hard to know like exactly what is going to break someone's thought process free when it comes to these. When, where, why, how, what, right? So that's just kind of one of those things. And sometimes you don't know until you do. So we's be doing.
I thought it went really well. So we've reached the end again. As usual, like, comment, subscribe. Please make all the comments you want. We didn't get political in this one, so we don't have to worry about that. Like the last one was at danger of doing. Great video. Like
It's a video need to be done.
Comment which format between this one and the previous one you like best. We will have a third format for the next one so that we can decide and everybody can decide what they think works best. But, we're always reading the comments. We're always responding to the comments. So please interact.
Yep. And this is, like I said, this one and the next one, we do understand that do take some in front of YouTube skills to be able to do. So obviously it's not attainable for everything, but see how it goes. We had another one that's coming out recently that's talking about the boot boom. In that one, if your comments aren't political, let us know if you're interested in what other people think about our thoughts on that, because that's another thing we've been toiling with a little bit is, having some friends of the channel like Chris and Dale maybe talk about some of the stuff that went on in that video and kind of see what their thoughts are and if anybody's interested in stuff like that. I don't think that's something we want to regularly get into, like having our content reacted to in that kind of way, but that's a interesting video, and those topics have been touched on a lot of other channels in different ways that talk about like customer inclinations and neurotices and stuff. But this is the first time I think anyone's taken a very hard-nosed approach to it. And unfortunately, I don't think Jeff or I are elegant enough to not take anything but the hard-nosed approach. we're the spiritual and literal bull in a china shop here.
I'm a little blunt.
Yeah, there's a reason we almost called this Two Salty Assholes at one point.
Took the words right out of my mouth. That was the very first name that was thought up for the podcast.
Mm-hmm. Probably should have stuck with it, but here's what it is. Brothers in Boots works better. There's certain things that you don't always want to swim up the waterfall, even though that's what's necessary. And that's one where we decided to ride the waterfall down instead of try to swim back up it. YouTube would have buried the absolute fuck out of the other name. Also, it would have the acronym.
We tend to avoid being the salty assholes we are.
Yeah, well, in the acronym would have been TSA, Two Salty Assholes. No, that'd have been dumb.
Would have worked for Dale.
It would have worked for Dale, except he was like, you guys making me come to work? Fuck this, I'm not doing that. So like I said, like, comment, subscribe. Hope you all enjoy, and we'll see you in the next one.
Gotcha.